Labour is back. Labour is back. That battle that went on here between decency and honesty and bringing people together and division, manipulation, misinformation, lies, that battle isn't just in Batley and Spen. That is the battle of modern politics. And the Labour Party is in that battle. We're going to fight all the way, every inch of the way, and we're going to win that battle. We've got to fight that. But Labour is back. This is just the start. I want many more days like this. Labour is coming home.
Please clap.
Please clap, yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised you got some Jeb Bush vibes. No, I mean, Keir Starmer's incredibly charismatic, Michael. What are you talking about? Labour is coming home. A reference, of course, to It's Coming Home from England, which, yeah. Here's the thing, Michael. That clip was of Keir Starmer after Labour won the Batley and Spen by-election almost a month ago. And you would think from that Labour gained the seat and didn't just hang on to it by a thread by 300 votes. But that was the case, unfortunately for Starmer. This was a seat in Batley and Spen, which Labour held, and basically, as you can see it from the graphic on screen, they just held on to the Conservatives. Again, you look at that graphic on screen, Labour's vote plummeting, almost getting overtaken by the Conservatives. You would not say that Labour is back. But anyway, that's what Keir Starmer was saying. I likened it to Manchester City winning with a last-minute goal against Milton Keynes Dons, let's say, and having an open-top bus parade after that win. But Labour insiders after this victory were feeling themselves, and of course, Michael, they would disagree with the title of this video, that the Labour Party are doomed. So what we are going to go through in this video is show why, despite Labour incredible victory by 300 votes in a seat they already held in Batley and Spen. Despite that victory, things don't look good for the Labour. And basically, our point is, in this video, Labour are going after voters that simply don't want to vote for them in mass numbers and ignoring their core voters. That is going to be the hypothesis of this video, and we've got some nice evidence to go along with that.
Well, you know what they say, Luke. Once a hypothesis has evidence, it becomes a theory.
Okay, so it's a theory then, I guess. That's it.
Well, we haven't shown the evidence yet.
Okay, well, let's go through it. So first up, we have this tweet from Elena Correa. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right, but anyway, she says, Labour Batley campaign source says, this is after Labour's incredible victory, basically built a new electoral coalition in 6 weeks, lost the Conservative Muslim vote over gay rights and Palestine, and won back a lot of 2019 Tory voters. This result shows we're reconnecting with the wider electorate again. Okay, so a couple of things. The Conservative vote decreased by 1.6%. So, yeah, I'm not sure that was true, that you won back a lot of 2019 Tory voters. But anyway, the actual meat of what she's saying is that, Labour disregarding Muslim voters made it successful. And as you can see, the fact that they just squeaked over the line kind of contradicts that. But anyway, let's go through what she's actually saying. Basically, socially conservative voters in the Red Wall need to be listened to, apart from if they're Muslim. Then they are divisive, which created quite a nice meme, as you can see, Michael. It's the Family Guy meme. Legitimate concerns, unacceptable bigotry if your skin is darker. Would you say that's accurate, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, Seth MacFarlane really has done more to facilitate the calling out of racism than any other person in history with this meme, because it really does, it's just applicable in so many situations. And this is definitely an example of that. Absolutely.
So that's one point. Of course, Labour have all been about appealing to quote-unquote Red Wall voters, apart from if they're Muslim, then that's an issue now. And, they can be all high and mighty and above it all and, not be not pander to their bigotry. But anyway, it is also quite a racist thing for this Labour source to say, because it assumes people won't vote for Labour if Muslims vote for Labour. And, well, the 2017 general election completely disproved that, didn't it? Because Labour had a very high Muslim vote. It gained a lot of votes in places like Batley and Spen and other quote-unquote Red Wall constituencies. So that argument is just complete rubbish about, this allows us to appeal to the wider electorate. You can appeal to both. But, of course, here's the thing. They don't want to. And also, from the source, of course, it talked about, Muslims not wanting or not liking gay rights, and that's why they voted against Labour. I mean, that's not even true. Corbyn in 2019 won, I think it was 86% of the Muslim vote. And I think it's quite fair to say that Corbyn was not anti-gay. He was very much pro-gay rights. And it is true on the Palestine issue, and that is why I think Labour didn't do so well with Muslims. Nothing to do with gay rights, though. And that's because Labour, on that issue, take the right-wing position, the very right-wing position that Israel has a right to just basically have an apartheid state. So basically, Michael, there are a lot of things to delve into from that source, but it underlines a big problem that Labour have. Like, they do not want and do not care about getting Muslim votes. And again, in Batley and Spen, it almost cost them a seat. Thankfully, it didn't for them, but it almost did, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Labour have always had kind of a, I guess, diverse coalition of support, inescapably. And certainly, I think, sure, if Labour ever framed themselves as like the pro-Muslim party, they would probably lose votes from, people in the red wall who are kind of white working class Northerners. And if Labour ever really framed themselves as the gay party, they would probably lose votes from conservative religious Muslims. But the reality is that Labour's strength is to kind of just focus on common sense principles that advance everybody's situation. And that way they can bring in a variety of different supporters. And people won't just have to be hyper aware of who else is supporting Labour. But it seems like some of these Labour insiders are actually thinking that. They're thinking, oh, we need to make sure the bad people aren't supporting Labour, which is just a really weird attitude to have as a party, to be like thinking that you don't want specific people supporting your party.
Yeah, no, it is very weird. And the thing is that what you described, an agenda which helps everyone, is why they were so good in 2017. That's why they did so well and got 40% of the vote. But that's the thing, Labour desperately want it to be true, because here's the thing, they don't really want to win the Muslim voters, because they disagree with them on Palestine and Israel, so that they don't want to have to have Muslims voting for them, because they want to be on Israel's side on this issue. And also they want to appeal to white red wall quote unquote voters and they want to think bashing Muslims and treating them with contempt will help win back the white vote. Unfortunately for them, as we can see on screen with the Batley and Spen by-election, and compared to previous elections in that constituency, that tactic may have just won them the seat in 2021, but going by the rest of the history of this constituency, certainly in the last 20 years or so, not a good tactic, not something that you want to repeat. But maybe Labour will just convince themselves that this tactic worked because it's what they want to do. But basically, Michael, I think the point of this video is to show that this is a pattern. Labour don't want to win those voters that it has. They want to win different voters than the ones it currently has. I've never really seen a party treat its own voters with so much contempt, but it's because, they don't like them. And I think this can be seen by this clip of Keir Starmer and Laura Kuenssberg, who went to Blackpool to interview or have a conversation with quote-unquote ex-Labour voters. So this video is very interesting and informative, Mike. You ready to dissect this, Michael?
I'll take any opportunity to watch Keir Starmer's raw charisma on display.
You could say it's his charisma. Get it? Anyway, let's watch the video.
Last voted Labour, I'd say 2010.
1997.
I have no idea when I last voted Labour. No idea in the slightest. And I've got no idea who he is.
Hiya.
Okay, Michael, the first sign that this video is, I don't want to be too harsh and say complete bullshit. This lady says, I've got no idea the last time I voted Labour. And then immediately the next thing that comes up on the screen is Keir Starmer meets ex-Labour voters. I mean, I'm sorry, did anyone in the production maybe think that was a bit of a contradiction? This lady's like, have I ever voted Labour? I don't know. Keir Starmer meets ex-Labour voters. I just don't believe how that could have happened, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I like the idea that they're kind of leaving the door open to the fact that she may have voted Labour. She just could have forgotten it in the past, She's just saying, I don't know when I last voted Labour, which, does sound an awful lot like she's never voted Labour. But I guess there's some deniability there.
Yeah, exactly. So we're off to a great start already. Let's continue with the video.
I don't even recall ever seeing you before, so you're not out there, are you? At the minute, anyway. Well, I wouldn't have known who you were.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can fix
No
that.
disrespect or anything. It's very nice to see you.
The thing I like about that criticism, obviously she says no disrespect, but it's a criticism that's very kind to Keir Starmer, in that it's basically saying, the problem with Keir Starmer is that people aren't seeing him, he's not out there, but if they did see him, if they did get to know him, then they'd like him. That's kind of the implication of having that as your main criticism.
Absolutely, it is quite fair to Keir Starmer. And the thing is, looking at the polls, a lot of people know who he is. He's not unknown, really, at all. And a lot of people do not like him after getting to know him. But anyway, we'll get past that for now and go on to what a couple of other people have to say.
First thing is, your party is divided within itself. Get rid of all these sort of bickering people who are losers. They want to lose further by doing what they're doing.
If someone's in my shadow cabinet or on my front bench, I can do something about it because I can fire them. If they're on the back bench, then they've got a bit more freedom to say what they want. But I get the point you're making is it doesn't really matter to anybody else. You want to hear one voice.
I honestly believe for the Labour Party, it's a stigma of Jeremy Corbyn. He's still on, 18 months on, and it's still there. People think he's toxic.
Okay, so those were two interesting voters. One of them wanted basically Keir Starmer to fire all the MPs who disagreed with him. As Starmer said, he's not allowed to do that. He would if he could, but he can't, unfortunately. And the other voter, of course, said that the stigma of Jeremy Corbyn is still around the party, even though he's been suspended. Interestingly, that guy had not voted Labour since, he said, 2010, which means he didn't vote for Labour in 2015 with Ed Miliband as leader when Jeremy Corbyn was not at all even known amongst the British public. So, yeah, again, it's getting advice from that person is not the best idea, I would say. And also the other guy, he hadn't voted Labour since 1997. I don't see how this is useful in any way for Keir Starmer, wouldn't you say, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the bizarre thing about not having voted since 1997 is that's when Labour obviously became New Labour and introduced more neoliberal policies. So I'm not even sure what that guy's whole deal is. It seems like, what's his kind of politics, that he disliked Labour under Tony Blair, who was kind of the anti-Jeremy Corbyn, and also, I guess, presumably dislikes Jeremy Corbyn as well. And also the guy who said it's the stench of Jeremy Corbyn, that's also very convenient for Keir Starmer, in that it's like, he just needs to get rid of that guy before him, and, as long as, again, like, once people realize, it's Keir Starmer in charge, not Jeremy Corbyn, then they'll realise how fantastic Labour are now. And, again, with this guy, considering, like you say, he didn't vote under Ed Miliband, who is kind of very reminiscent of Keir Starmer, it's hard to imagine that he would ever support Keir Starmer.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I echo what I said before. Like, I don't think Starmer is actually going to listen to these voters. It's just, a whole show. But yeah, it's ridiculous that it's being presented as something really interesting. And next we are going to talk about support for the under-25s, Michael. This is apparently a section on supporting the under-25s. Let's see what the voters think.
Don't waste your money. If they want to work, they are already working. But they're just sitting on the backsides. They don't want to. Because the government are still paying them to sit on their bums, they will not get up.
In this country, there's a lot of people under the age of 25 who just don't want to work. Trying to get everybody into a job, I just don't think that will happen.
You're always going to get some people who maybe don't want to work, but there are lots of young people who've lost their job in this pandemic.
Okay, Michael, so that clip was, of course, quite frustrating because, as Starmer says, we're in a fucking pandemic. Like, that's just decimated the economy. And that's the thing. I remember there was a poll that 47% of Britons think people who lost their job during this pandemic deserve to. And of course, a lot of those people vote Conservative because they have this ideology. Well, if you're not working, if you don't have the opportunities, you just don't deserve it. That is, of course, right-wing Conservative ideology 101. And it's why it's so fucking stupid because, of course, like, if you lose your job because of a pandemic, what are you meant to do? Like, you can't do anything. And that is the issue with this. And Starmer's pushback is, he is right on the second bit, but it is really weak. It's like, well, you're always going to get some people who don't want to work. And that's the thing why this exercise is so stupid, because those voters have got incredibly reactionary thoughts in their mind. And the reason that they've got those views on under 25s and probably have some very interesting views on immigrants and so forth is because they read or are influenced by newspapers who tell them this shit. And those newspapers are supportive of the Conservative Party, which is why this whole exercise is completely fruitless.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of these people, if they did vote Labour, it was something they kind of inherited. But from an ideological point of view, believing in the essential ideas of like social justice and redistributive economic justice, I don't think these people are particularly interested in that at all. And they've almost certainly internalized the idea that while they're probably infinitely poorer than the wealthy capitalist class, they would say that they're doing better off than struggling young people or homeless people or immigrants because they work harder and they're not lazy scroungers. And obviously that's a very kind of reassuring view for them to have, and it's one which of course, yes, definitely the Daily Mail and things like that 100% feeds into. And of course the Daily Mail is run by the aforementioned wealthy capitalists.
Yeah, I know you went very deep in there, Michael, to explain the whole problem with our media, but yeah, that's the problem. Is like these people think that way because they read stuff, and that of course it's just pure like right-wing ideology. That's the thing, that is a very extremely right-wing point of view, and you're trying to convince these people to vote for the Labour Party, which is of course supposedly left-wing, and that is the issue. And so yeah, I just want to end talking about this video on one last clip of that guy talking again, giving his analysis on the Labour Party.
He's got a massive job to do, to get people to vote Labour again.
And he's right to an extent, but he's got a massive job to do to get people like him, that voter, to vote for Labour again. Because here's the thing, in Blackpool in 2017, Labour increased their share of the vote in both Blackpool South and Blackpool North as two constituencies. They lost Blackpool South in 2019 because, I would say, of the Brexit vote, something that Keir Starmer championed. But that's the thing, that guy at the end, he's right, like basically the only way he would vote for Labour is if it transformed into the Conservative Party. And that is something that I think this is the problem. That's what Labour appear to want to do. There is a pattern that Labour don't want to win the voters that it has. They want to win those older reactionary voters, who vote for the Conservatives now, who basically say that young people are all lazy. It's why you see the party consistently apologising for how bad it is. It's a signal to those voters like, we're different now. And of course, these are the voters that they have to win to seem legitimate in the eyes of the media. And that's why the BBC and Laura Kuenssberg, was happy to be involved in this. They want to perpetuate this narrative that these are the voters that Labour has to go after. But of course, a much better thing to do in this instance was interview voters who voted for Labour in 2017, who then didn't in 2019. Because again, Labour got 40% of the vote in 2017. I'll keep on repeating that because, that's more than they got in 2005, 2010, 2015, and of course 2019, and probably in the next general election as well. They need to interview those voters because those voters are the key to them winning, because sadly a lot of the people in this video just aren't going to go and vote for Labour, are they, Michael?
Oh yeah, and obviously, you would have thought they'd have at least a token kind of young person on there, but I guess it kind of speaks to the fact that, in a way, this idea of the ex-Labour voter is kind of just like almost like a mythical creature invented by the media, or it's kind of like an archetype, I guess, where they've decided the ex-Labour voter is a working class, socially conservative person from, Northern England, most likely. And obviously, that's not necessarily true. What about the ex-Labour voter who is a young person who's frustrated with their, lack of meaningful kind of policies towards social and economic change? That person is just not considered an ex-Labour voter. And to be honest, I'm not even blaming this specific event, because I think really this event is just feeding off of the wider kind of media narrative about what it means to be an ex-Labour voter, and that's why I think you haven't seen the people who would have voted for Labour in 2017 which aren't voting for them now, because those kind of people don't fit into, like I say, the narrative about what an ex-Labour voter is.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Michael. I am going to blame Labour for doing this, because I think the person behind this was a lady by the name of Deborah Mattinson, who is now working for Keir Starmer, and I think she is very happy to play into this narrative, or maybe just responsible, or partly responsible, of course, for this narrative being created. She is an advisor that Starmer hired recently. She used to work for Gordon Brown, and I just want to read this extract about her, as you can see on screen. So, the move comes as Labour's new election guru said that the party had to win over hero voters such as van drivers and shop workers to rebuild the party and take back the Red Wall. The pollster Deborah Mattinson gave an hour-long presentation to the Shadow Cabinet last week as part of a reset in the strategy of the party's by-election loss in Hartlepool. So, hero voters such as van drivers, Michael, that's who Deborah Mattinson is trying to get Labour to appeal to. Again, just complete bullshit, and she had more of this kind of Fox analysis on Politics Live, where she gave a very interesting analysis as to why Labour was struggling. Do you want to hear it, Michael?
Only if it involves bigging up some more hero van drivers.
Well, I think you're in luck, Michael. This clip was after Labour's 2019 election loss, and get ready for some incredible political analysis here from Deborah Mattinson. Here we go.
You're writing a book on Labour's Red Wall and the crumbling of it, that the Labour Party has gone from being the party of a pint and a pie to quinoa. What do you mean exactly?
Yes, I mean, it sounds jokey, but actually there's a very serious point underlying that, which is about the kind of, if you like, the culture and the image of the party and the people that it represents, because people look at a political party and they ask, is this a party for me? And there's a group of people who, back in the day, when Labour was the party of a pie and a pint, I know where I am with Labour, that's where I am. And the move to quinoa, which actually, it was some focus groups I did in Crewe, actually, a couple of years ago. Nobody could spell quinoa, by the way.
Well, I'm not surprised. I don't blame them
nor
for
me,
that.
but I can now because I had to look it up. But basically, what they were saying.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of people think
exactly so.
No, it's quinoa.
Okay.
Exactly so. So what they were saying was that the Labour Party isn't the party that represents people like me anymore. It doesn't sound like me, it doesn't look like me, and it's all about people who live in, kind of North London. And now, this is obviously an extreme point of view, but I think that there is something very serious here to unpick, and of course those cultural differences fall out in other ways as well.
Oh yeah, it's such an extreme view that you completely agree with it, don't you, Deborah Mattinson? That's the thing, it's complete bullshit, pie and a pint and quinoa. I don't know how she managed to get that. She probably thought of it herself, because the thing is, with her and other people in the Labour ranks, it's helpful to push this narrative that Labour basically need to be more reactionary. They need to appeal to Tory voters more, like that guy in that clip who said Labour basically who would probably like a pie and a pint, wouldn't he? Basically Labour are too kind to under 25s. That's the thing, and that of course is a more right-wing policy. So yeah, this is the issue with Deborah Mattinson.
No, yeah, I mean, I do think there is obviously a diversity with how Labour present themselves, but I think that's just because it's kind of weird to say Labour's become the party of quinoa, because did that idea of kind of posh kind of, I guess, hipsters in North London eating quinoa, did that really exist a couple of decades ago? Maybe not. So it's kind of obviously Labour have appealed to a kind of more cosmopolitan voter base, but that's because in some sense that demographic has become just a lot more relevant over the past couple of decades. So if anything, you're literally pointing to the fact that Labour have appealed to a growing demographic, the young demographic, the demographic which will go on to become more and more of the voter base or the electorate, and you're saying, it's a bad thing that they've developed that image.
Yeah, because they don't like those voters. They don't like them.
And I think the main problem is framing it in an oppositional way, which is obviously, and I think the reason why they're framing it in an oppositional way, like you say, is because they don't like them, because they don't need to. They could just say, Labour have, like I say, I mean, like we said almost at the beginning, Labour have always had a kind of diverse range of support.
Yeah, they can't conceive of appealing to both of those sects, because appealing to both of those sects is, again, what you get in 2017, and again, even though they were successful, Labour that year, people like Deborah Mattinson are ideologically opposed to that. And also, where have these voters in Crewe apparently got this idea that Labour appeals to North London, Liberals who eat quinoa? Again, from the media, once more. So that is, again, another thing to think about. So there's another reason why this strategy of Labour to just basically disregard its voters and go after voters which aren't going to vote for it is bad. There's another reason, Michael, which is money. Basically turning off their core membership, making them leave the Labour Party, is not good for Labour's finances, because they're not funded by big business like the Conservatives are. And that has led to this headline. As you can see on screen, Labour could cut up to a quarter of its staff in cost-saving push. Plans were discussed at the NEC, which could see the party try to get 90 people to voluntary resignations. So this is big, Michael, of course. That's almost a quarter of its staff going. And the reason is that, people just aren't staying in the Labour Party anymore. Do you want to have a guess, by the way? NEC head David Evans. Who did he blame this on, Michael?
I believe he blamed one Jumble Bob Cromlin.
Jumble Bob Cromlin, also known as Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, somehow this is Jeremy Corbyn's fault, even though with his leadership, Labour had incredible membership numbers that allowed them to have a lot of money. Starmer comes in and that all goes away. And the thing is, Michael, they're not just like turning off, members who had been in the party who are now leaving. They are specifically banning members of the party in their, their factional warfare. This also happened last week. This is from Rachel Weirmouth, who works for the Mirror. Exclusive: Labour against witch hunt, Labour in exile, socialist appeal and resist are set to be prescribed by Labour's ruling NEC as Starmer bids to stamp out toxic extremism. The Mirror understands more than 1,000 will be kicked out of the party as a result. Now, this news came on Saturday night, so it would be discussed on Sunday morning in the papers, and it's clear Labour wanted this to be like a big story. It wasn't really, but that's what they were going for. And of course, you get rid of another 1,000 members. One of those groups, Socialist Appeal, is just like a socialist communist kind of party, which is just like, it's pretty insignificant. And again, it's like, this is big news. Well, Labour's back, Labour values are back, and yeah, again, like, it's just completely pointless. It won't help the party's finances, of course, at all if they get rid of 1,000 members. But they don't seem to care. They are literally like just killing themselves because that's what they need to do to hold on to the Labour Party, to hold on to the ideology that they want to hold on to. It is rather incredible and depressing at the same time, wouldn't you say, Michael?
Really does come down to the question of like, what the hell do they even want Labour to be? Because, yeah, like you said, we already have the Conservatives, which is both why there's no point in Conservative voters, red Tories, voting for Labour, no matter how much Labour tried to make themselves like the Conservatives. And, yeah, why is it that Labour is so intent on losing? And I guess it is just because their hatred of the Labour left and, actual meaningful change has been more important to them than actually getting any sort of power.
Yeah, I mean, that's the analysis we come to at the end of every Labour video, it seems, but that is the case. You know what they really want, Michael? They want to go in a time machine back to 1997, when it was all good again, where they could bash immigrants, they could bash, single mothers, and they could win 40% of the vote. Sadly, like I said, those days are gone now, and there is no going back. So yes, that is why Labour are doomed.
You know what, Luke? I think we spent so much time hammering home Labour's failures that you could say we've laboured the point.
Great. All right, see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.